Welcome to the book reading program of 3ABN Australia Radio. Does your faith need a boost? Do you think that miracles only happened in Bible times? Think again. Compiled by Remnant Publications, the book Get Ready for a Miracle recounts true stories that prove that when we step out in faith, God displays His power in undeniable ways. Here is our reader, Colville Smith.
This story is entitled, The God Who Heals. Exodus chapter 15 and verse 26 says, If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in His sight, give ear to His commandments and keep all His statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. The screech of brakes cut the warm afternoon stillness as the loaded jeepney slid to a gravelly stop at Talipapa. A sleepy dog raised his head, looked at the jeep, and then lay back down. A puff of blue smoke drifted upward as the driver gunned the engine and then shut it off. He slid out of his seat, ambled over to a sawhorse and plywood restaurant, and sat down on a wooden bench to wait for his rice and fish. The passengers on the hot metal jeepney roof stood up and stretched, climbed down, and made their way over to the cool shade of the vegetable market while they waited for the driver to eat his lunch. The passengers sitting inside the jeepney slouched in their seats as a bevy of women made their way over to them to sell snacks of sweet rice, soft drinks, peanuts and balu, and fermented eggs containing fetal chicks. Lunito dropped lightly down from the jeepney roof and made his way over to the shade. He wished the driver had waited a bit longer before stopping for lunch. His stop at Pandarokan was just a few miles further. Thirst drove Lunita to look around the rickety sheds for a water faucet. Spying an old broken pipe sticking out of the ground, Lunita opened the valve, bent over and drank his fill. 15 minutes later, as he swung himself back onto the jeepney roof, Lunito felt a twinge in his stomach. He thought, I must have eaten something that did not agree with me. A few miles down the road, he dropped off of the jeepney, waved goodbye to the driver, and walked into Pandarokan. 9 hours later, Lunito was in grave trouble. He was vomiting almost continuously and had terrible diarrhea. He was dying. The villagers had many times before seen it happen. Lunito had the dreaded cholera. They tried to get Lunito to drink some water, but as fast as he drank, the fluid came back out even faster. Seventh-day Adventist elders hurried from hut to hut, collecting money to pay for Lunito's fare to the Mamburao hospital. Without an IV infusion, he would certainly die. However, there was not enough money in the village to get Lunito to the hospital. Having done all they could physically do for Lunito, the elders and Adventist church members gathered around him and began praying to God for his healing. Hour after hour crept by. The crickets continued their chirping and the river behind his hut continued its burble, but Lunito's heartbeats gradually slowed until he faded into unconsciousness. His eyes rolled back into his skull. Every bone in his body seemed to be poking through his shrunk and taut skin. Finally, tired and discouraged, the members and elders shuffled back to their huts. They knew there would be a funeral the next morning. In the morning, as the sun peeped over the green mountains and illuminated the Pandarokan Valley, the elders sadly trudged to Lunito's house. As they rounded the bend in the trail, they suddenly stopped and stared. There on the steps to his hut sat Lunito. He grinned and waved them over as he stuffed a banana into his mouth. "What's wrong?" he asked between bites. "You look like you're seeing a ghost." Well, maybe we are," stammered the elders. "Last night when we left you, you were dying. Now you're alive and well. What happened?" "The last thing I remember was all of you kneeling around me and praying," replied Lunito. "Then I woke up and felt awfully hungry. So I got my machete and walked to my mountain farm and cut off a stalk of bananas. God sure answered your prayers." The elders dropped to their knees and offered God thanks for his incredible saving miracle. Within minutes, word flashed through the village that the church's prayers had been answered. God is still at work in the Alangan Church. Word has spread all over the mountains of central Mindoro that the Adventist God heals. A few months ago, a skinny man dressed only in a loincloth and his wife, dressed in a flour sack, carried a small 4-year-old boy into Pandarukan. The boy had a severe fever, was barely breathing, and his eyes had rolled back into his head. "We've heard that God listens to you," pleaded the parents. "Please pray for our son. The witch doctors have tried all of their medicines, but he continues to get worse. Talk with your God and ask him to heal him." Taking the child into their arms, the church elders knelt in a circle and prayed for his healing. The next day, the child was the same. Again, the elders prayed over him. The second day passed, and still there was no improvement. As the sun rose in the sky on the third day, the elders again knelt and prayed for the boy. The following day, the child showed much improvement. Slowly, day after day, the fever gradually left, until he was able to eat and drink again. However, the fever left him unable to speak. The elders prayed again, and by the end of 2 months, the boy was able to speak and laugh and yell just like any other child. As the little family made their way back along the dirt trails through the mountain valleys, they told everyone they met how the God in Pandarukan village had healed their son. Not long ago, a middle-aged husband carried his sick wife into Pandarukan. He told how they had spent 4 months following a powerful witch doctor's orders for her healing. The husband had sacrificed all of his pigs. He had given the doctor all of his money. He had killed all of his chickens in ritual after ritual, all to no avail. Next, he had borrowed money from his family and friends and had carried his wife down to the lowlands where a powerful Filipino spirit doctor lived. For a month, this spirit doctor had worked on his wife with no results. Finally, his money gone, the husband was carrying his wife home to die when he heard about a powerful God in Pandarukan. The elders and church members gathered around the young wife and prayed for her healing. Immediately she began to improve. At the end of 7 days, she was completely well, and she and her husband packed up their few possessions to begin the long walk back to their home. With tears in their eyes, they thanked the church members and elders for their prayers. "Thank you so very much for your prayers," they said. "Truly, you know the God who heals." That message has covered the mountains where the Alangan live. As a result, the Alangan Seventh-day Adventist Church is experiencing rapid growth. A reflection associated with this story comes from The Desire of Ages, page 348. It is for our own benefit to keep every gift of God fresh in our memory. Thus, faith is strengthened to claim and to receive more and more. There is greater encouragement for us in the least blessing we ourselves receive from God than in all the accounts we can read of the faith and experience of others. The soul that responds to the grace of God shall be like a watered garden. His health shall spring forth speedily, his light shall rise in obscurity, and the glory of the Lord shall be seen upon him. Let us then remember the loving kindness of the Lord, and the multitude of his tender mercies. The God Who Heals was written by Tim Holbrook of Adventist Frontier Missions. It's used by permission of Adventist Frontier Missions. Adventist Frontier Missions seeks to establish indigenous Seventh-day Adventist church planting movements with unreached people groups. You can visit afmonline.org for more information.
You've been listening to the book reading program by 3ABN Australia Radio, featuring Get Ready for a Miracle. For more information about this book, visit remnantpublications.com.